everyone. Welcome back to the Homefront Live. I am your host, Reed Galen. Today, I am joined by the one and only Tara Palmeri. She is the author at The Red Letter and host of the Tara Palmeri Show. You should subscribe to both of those things. Tara, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I just saw Yolanda Palmeri's on the line.
My
mother.
Hi, Mom.
She's on vacation, so I'm guessing she's using it to check out what I'm doing.
to check in on you. All right. I want to throw a curveball at you. We had three things we're definitely going to talk about today, which is the tragedy in Minnesota, the Noakes Kings marches this weekend, and then Trump's parade. But the one thing is, today is 10 years since Donald Trump came down the escalator.
10-year anniversary.
I didn't even know that until
I think yesterday was his 79th birthday, right?
Or Saturday was. Yeah.
Saturday, 79th anniversary, 250th anniversary of the Second Continental Congress, 10-decade anniversary of Trump's golden escalator.
Right.
So many anniversaries, so many birthdays.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I'll go back and look. I wrote a post, I think, on Medium. Remember Medium? It might still be around. I don't know. About what a joke Trump would be, right? How this was ridiculous and silly. In fact, I'll go find it. It's probably why I shouldn't prognosticate on anything. But it's hard to believe.
I was in Europe at the time, so I wasn't covering him. But I was telling people in Europe that I thought that there was a real. Actually, I have text messages from friends where I'm like, I told them, and they acknowledged that I said Trump would win, which is weird that I knew this, but I'd known him for a long time, and I just had this gut feeling.
Well, if you had known now what you knew, or if you knew now what you knew then, you know what I'm trying to say, would you have just stayed in Europe and just said,
I moved to cover Trump because I had known him since I was 22. I'd covered, I was at the New York Post.
At the Post, right?
Yeah. So he would call me all the time. And I met him when I was at Page 6 and I covered him just as a New York Post reporter. And I remember one time having to tell him, Mr. Trump, we can't write about you anymore. You know, you're not running for president back in 2012. And he's like, write this down. Mitt Romney thinks I have a chance. I just think, I remember coming home to see my parents in, where were they living at the time? They were living in Somerset County, but I went through Bucks County and it was just all these Trump signs. And then I had just covered Brexit in the UK and I saw Brexit, this great, kind of populist movement. And I thought something is happening. And so, I saw that I sort of saw it coming.
So there's a couple things I want to ask you, because that's the one thing that I have noticed in our conversations with one another, but also in your work, is you do a really good job. I don't say pretty good job. You do a really good job of not being taken in by the bullshit that either Republicans, Democrats, the left, the right, the other members of the media that get taken in by it. And I remember about this time last year, you and I were talking about Trump having been convicted. And you're like, this is not going to hurt him. This is going to help him with his people. This is not going to hurt him. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Because, I know everything, of course. And you're like, no, this is not going to hurt him. And it turns out that you were right. And the guy is still Teflon Don in many ways, unfortunately.
It was It was a really weak case, though. That was the thing. It was they were trying to get him on a some white collar crime business. It was just if you're gonna nail a guy like Trump, you got to nail him down, and that was just not. I think actually Letitia James did a lot more harm than good by prosecuting that case. Something that had been had been in the hopper for years and years. It was something that was committed. I mean, the whole porn star angle obviously made it sexier, but it really was. It was a business transaction, right? It's not what the point of it was that he falsified business records. So it's just, and he's the ultimate victim, and it's impossible to not see these prosecutions through political lenses, especially when Tish James says, "I'm going to nail him to the wall." So.
And look, that's the thing that is unhappy as I was about the outcome of last November's election. I'll tell you, I woke up on November 6th and it was like I was Rip Van Winkle, right? I've been fighting alongside Democrats for so long now, right? That I was co-opted voluntarily, into sort of everything that the Democrat, like whether it was Biden or Harris, does is good, and everything Donald Trump, by definition, does is bad. Now, I still 97% of the time believe most of what Donald Trump does is not for the greater good. That's neither here nor there. But it took not the shock. It took him winning again to sort of shake me out of my intellectual and strategic torpor to say, well, there's just no possible way he could win again. Now, of course, the flip side of that, Tara, is that if you're actively working on behalf of someone's campaign, you almost have to get into that mindset publicly.
Yeah,
Anyway.
no, that's
Right.
that's why I don't like the groupthink stuff, because it's like, if you have to fight for someone or you feel like they deserve to be defended, then you're not going to see clearly. It's a fact. You have too much
Right,
on the line. You know what I
right.
mean? I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes
and
maybe when you see them up close, you see the warts and all. And like, if you're really up close, like say you were on the Kamala Harris campaign and you saw it for yourself, or you were in the White House, you saw the condition that Biden was in. But then at that point, you're like, I'm on this ship, got to keep rowing. And so you either like, it's not, it's hard to keep a clear head, I think.
well, it is, and that was the thing. Going back to 2023, and then I want to talk about some of the more recent stuff that's happened. Is when it was clear that President Biden was going to run again, and there wasn't going to be, outside of Dean Phillips, who frankly probably deserves an apology for me, because I made every booze and gelato joke I probably could about the poor guy.
Yeah.
Was that like, okay, that's what I said. Like, you've been up close and personal. There's only one person, maybe two people in the world who can tell him not to run again, right? One of them is him saying, you know what, Joe,
Yeah.
you're not going to do it. And the other is Mrs. Biden, Dr. Biden. And neither one of them were going to do that. And as I always said, look, once somebody sits behind the Resolute desk, the idea of giving it up voluntarily, I think, is almost impossible. I just don't know that it's, and then the people around him, Nick, good. We've seen this throughout history. It's not just the people around Biden or the people around Trump, but we've always seen that the mandarins have far more control than any of us ever really want to admit, because the presidency is embodied in one human, but is expressed in a whole bunch of people, all of whom have their own shortcomings, their own desires, their own things that they want to get done, their own interests that they want to pursue.
Also, the
And
president's in a bubble. He's in a complete bubble filled with yes men all the time.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's like I used to tell people, like, there's Trump's White House is probably different, but there are walk-in privileges to the Oval Office, and in any normal White House, that's like what, 7-8 people, right? And if you have that privilege, you want to maintain it. You want to make sure that you can walk in and say, Mr. President, Madam President, do you have a moment? Right. And back to your point about how things get twisted in your head. If that becomes something upon which you base your value or your value to the outside world, because people know you can do that, then you're likely to do things that maintain that privilege.
Oh, yeah. It is inherently political. You've got a bunch of political animals inside of a building, and all institutions are political, but take it to another level. And it's not a great place for diversity of thought. It's a lot of groupthink. And when you get into that silo, it becomes a place where disasters are. Like, it's when people all decide, let's stay on the Titanic and keep it going straight into that iceberg. You know what I mean? Like, there's no one there saying, hey, let's turn this around. I also think ego. There's no way that anyone is ever going to say, I'm going to step down from this role, going to abdicate the throne. That rarely happens, right? And that's essentially what we saw, was someone who was not willing to do that, and neither was his wife. And everyone around him kept saying, no, 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 no. And the lanyards ran the party, right? They ran the show, making sure that he, from the outside, looked coherent. But yeah, it was a sad moment in our history. And it's certainly a place that, the Democratic Party is wounded deeply from it and will have to rebuild itself. Luckily, though, President Trump is helping their cause by making himself unpopular with these raids, these ICE raids. I think like deportations in general are popular, especially if it's violent criminals. Like sometimes when you hear people like having like meltdowns over violent criminals being deported, it's like most people in America would
Right.
say, if you are,
It's not a great political position.
it's not the strongest one. With how the way they're doing it, I don't understand why they can't like actually follow the process properly because um, President Obama deported more people per day than President Trump, right? He didn't make a lot of noise about it. He also started the child separation policy. Didn't make a lot of noise about that either. Um, but there's a reason for some reason they're not able to like follow the process correctly. So I just think look at the administration, at the administrators like the DHS and what they're doing. Is it because Kristi Noem is out there playing the part of DHS officer and not actually thinking about how to do this properly, effectively? But there is like, due process. And if you go through it and you're not allowed to live in this country, then you have to leave. I've lived abroad. I luckily have dual citizenship, but, you know, I had friends when they lived in Belgium with me and they were on visas. They had to figure out how to stay. Like you can't just stay in a country forever illegally. So, and I understand the people who were allowed to come here during the Biden years promised asylum and then they were losing it. That's obviously unfair. And they took a huge risk. They left their lives behind. And to only have the promises that they had been given from a prior administration be reversed by the next administration. But this is kind of how it works. And in some ways, like when Trump was elected, it was a natural deterrent at the border. And that's why we're not even really seeing many crossings because people are afraid of what that's going to be like. But Trump won on immigration. He won on the economy. But I wanted to ask you something, Reed.
Mhm.
Why do you think you're not really hearing the word impeachment at all from Democrats? Feels like it's hanging over everything. But we know it's going to happen when they win back the House. But it's like a dirty little word.
Well, I know that there are a group of people out there who have been getting, petitions signed in support. I think I don't remember who the group is, but, they've got 600,000 signatures or something. And I know that Representative Green has said, when they retake the House, he'll be the first person to issue the articles or to bring up the articles. I think that it's going to happen. I think it's like to what effect? Right. You're going to go through this again. You're going to do this again. Even if Republicans don't do as well as they should theoretically next year, you're not going to get to 67 votes. I don't think. And so my guess is that there are members of the rank and file House caucus that desperately want to do it because they feel like on principle. And my guess is there's a number of Democratic leaders from Jeffries on down who are saying, please don't do this. Please don't do this. Please don't do this.
Wait. I got to let my mom get some love. Yolanda Palmeri says impeachment is wasteful. Actually, she's got pretty good political instincts, my mother.
I have no doubt. She clearly passed them along. So, I think that
I come from a mixed MAGA and then kind of rational mother family. She's pretty down the middle. But yeah, I agree. I think it seems like a waste of time. It's not going to go anywhere. It hasn't gone anywhere since, and it makes him look like more of a victim in the same way that the Tish James, But I will the Tish James investigation said. But here's the one thing, though. That he will continue to push the boundaries of the presidency. He will continue to push the law. He'll continue to try to sell access through his crypto Doge memes. He'll continue to take jets from Qatar.
right.
How do you stop him if you don't have that tool? And obviously, it doesn't matter because who cares if the Democrats vote to impeach him in the House and then the Senate it's shot down by the Republicans in the Senate because we don't think that the Democrats will take back the Senate, right? So what's the point of it? I mean, but how else do you hold them to account? Do you just hold hearings and embarrass them and use the press? I mean, even their cabinet officials won't show up and even show up with the budgets.
Right. Look, I think you said something earlier, which is like, I think that going back to your time at the New York Post, like you can't shame the man.
No.
And the idea of I saw some of these, some of the protesters, we're gonna get rid of Donald Trump. We got to make Donald, like how he's here for the next 3.5 years. And
Mm.
so the other part about impeachment is it doesn't address, I think, from my perspective, the issues that either the Democratic Party as an electoral organization or the resistance, opposition, whatever you want to call it. What would you do differently? What would you do instead? Okay, we've been saying for 10 years
Yeah.
Donald Trump is bad. It didn't work last time,
Can't
right?
run against him. You can't run against
Right.
him in 2028. You can run against him in 2026, but you really can't run against him in 2028
Yeah,
unless
I mean,
it's Donald Trump Jr. or
right.
like
So one of
Cheney.
my friends was telling me that there was a bunch of, television commercials going on in the Virginia gubernatorial race. Um, and it's all about, taking on Donald Trump. Like, why? Why? I mean, if you live in Tidewater, right? Like maybe you don't like Donald Trump, but is he your biggest issue? Right
Yeah.
now, maybe if you're a federal employee who got fired or laid off, I get it. But to me, this is where you're substituting Donald Trump, who is a big bad bully,
Mm.
for what you would do. And I
Yeah.
think that's why 14 million Democratic voters stayed home last year. And I don't think the Democrats can afford not to say, well, we'll just be in charge and everything will be fine. Or we're going to restore our institutions. The institutions people clearly didn't care enough about to protect, right? Or don't believe in. And that to me is the biggest thing is like, yeah, he's bad. Okay. What are you going to do differently? If you could wave a magic wand and say, person X with a D behind their name is now president, what would you do? What
Yeah.
would you do? Are you going to undo all the things that Trump has done? Well, that could take years. If you had to take a hard look and say, okay, if you were going to put the Department of Education back together, would you put it together the way it was? Right? Is that a rational way to look at it? Is that good governance?
I don't think a
Uh,
lot of people miss it.
that's my point.
Yeah.
So, like,
People don't really miss the department. I mean, maybe some people do, and we haven't seen the fallout yet. I mean, I think there's going to be a real fallout from the Health and Human Services being slashed.
right.
NIH grants. I interviewed a doctor about this who was working on life-saving healthcare, blood thinner medication.
Mhm.
And people will never know that funding was slashed after 10 years of working on it. I mean, type of blood thinners that could save lives, save people from getting strokes, save people from getting blood clots, from dying. I think it's that kind of stuff we don't really know yet. But you know what? I think when people hear about the crypto and they hear about the cutter jet, like it's gross and it's grifty, but I think they assume that it happens on both sides.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to.
I
That
mean,
was the
look at
point.
can I just tell you the image right now if you read the New York Times?
Right.
Alex Soros, mega donor, marries Huma Abedin,
Yep.
uh, aide to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, Kamala
And
Harris,
ex-wife of Anthony Weiner.
ex of Anthony Weiner. The entire Democratic establishment is being ushered in black cards into the Hamptons to a massive compound where they are secluded off having beef wagyu and beef puree, and we're and they're the party of the people. Like no wonder Trump was supposed able to co-opt them so easily. Uh,
Look, the
it,
rest of us can eat cake,
and
right?
then you can look at it, you can read about it in the New York Times, you can read about it in Vogue, you can see the pictures, but they're not doing themselves any favors. And that's why I think then people are like, "Oh yeah, Trump's tacky and he took a jet from Qatar, and yeah, he takes money from crypto guys and he's made hundreds of millions of dollars in the past 6 months."
Right.
People assume the same from the left, and they haven't really done much to change that impression.
And that's you reminded me of the point I wanted to make earlier, which is you're 100% right, which was if there was one thing that Trump has done better than anything, which was to create or illustrate or highlight the equivalency between both parties. You think I'm so bad? They're not so great. You think
Yeah.
you think I'm the only one? It's remember that interview he did? Oh, you think Russia's the only people that kill people? You don't think we kill people?
Also,
Right? Like,
Trump could say it too, like he could say it having some experience as being a Democratic donor.
right.
I mean, he was pals with the Clintons. He was pals with all these
They
people. He
went
was
to a
like,
second wedding or third wedding. Third wedding. The Melania wedding, whichever number that was.
yeah, to whatever number. I think that's number 3.
Number 3.
I know it feels like Marlo was an annulment because it was such a quickie.
Yeah, I know. And the poor daughter, she clearly doesn't, he doesn't
He was
see her.
like, why do we do
Yeah.
this?
Um,
Yeah.
but I think that's the point, and that goes back to what I'm saying is like the Democrats can't just simply say put us back in power because we're not him.
I think
The
whoever they pick is gonna be, like, someone who's so out there. They've gotta be, like, out there like how Trump was out there for the Republicans. They
right,
need someone who's so out there that has none of the stink of the Washington establishment class, and then, I think that person can rise up, but right now, I don't know, even people like Gavin, who's obviously, he's ascending right now in the war between Trump and well, California and Trump, and he's representing his state. He was a pretty big defender of Biden. I mean, he was out there right after that horrible debate,
mhm.
and he was like, "Don't believe your lying eyes. He's fine." And
Well,
I
look,
think
I mean, the
that's
thing about Newsom's presidential campaign ended the moment he decided to sit down at the French Laundry while the rest of the state was shut down. That's my. I'm not good on predictions,
Oh,
but
I
that's my
forgot about
prediction.
French Laundry. See, my brain is almost but how could you forget that? That's like,
Right.
but then for some reason, Trump is able to be gauche and spend all this time at his, like, palace on the sea, his gilded palace and his private clubs, and his son and his son's partners can open these executive branch private clubs that cost $500,000 membership, and it's a way for them to be cloistered off and forget. I mean, lobbyists who can afford this $500,000 fee, big pharma, big tech, the military industrial complex, they can get seats at their club and have time with
Right.
Pete Hegseth and
Be-
the HHS secretary. So they're playing by this. They're basically committing the same crimes,
right.
and they're not crimes per se, but it's like,
I'll tell you why. It's very
yeah, tell
for
me
me.
why.
It's very clear. First of all, Trump enjoys something, and going back to when you first talked to him, what I call the discount rate. Donald Trump has been a public asshole for 50 years. No one has ever expected him to be better than he is. Right?
Mm,
No one has ever expected that he is going to be the paragon of virtue and a
right.
good guy. Right? And so all of the stuff that he does he gets a massive discount on. The other part is that
The
with a
bar's
guy
low.
like
Yeah.
Newsom, and I would say this too with this goes back to the whole idea of both parties, is the Democrats tend to hold themselves up as morally superior.
Right.
So Gavin says we have to take COVID seriously. We have to keep the schools shut down. We have to do this,
Mm,
but not for me because it's my buddy's 50th birthday. Right.
mm,
So is it my rules versus your rules, or is it like none of the rules matter? And frankly, like Trump has been, like I said, Trump has been doing it. No one has any expectation. I'm not saying it's okay. Democrats don't have to be perfect. But this is what I will say is that, like, and this is what I said to a donor a few weeks ago is like, he's like, you have this level of like frustration and anger when you talk about Democrats. I'm like, yeah, because I thought they were better and
mm,
they're not better enough. And if you're going to be the white hats, then you have to wear the white hat. If
mm,
you're going to be the party of the little guy, then your leader in the US House cannot be the person who's personally blocking the insider trading stuff, right? Like all
mm,
of your moral authority goes out the window, but nobody wants to say that out loud, right? You're not the party of the little guy. You think you are, but you're not. You're the party of the people who go to the Huma and what's his name wedding. That's fine. Be who you are. But don't pretend to be you're not going out to the exurbs into the rural areas, right? Worrying about, farmers. You're not worried about organized labor to the extent that, you can't, you're expecting something from them and they're expecting something from you. So it's transactional in nature. It's not even belief based anymore. And that's why Republicans get away with it because unfortunately they don't pretend to believe in anything.
mm.
Right? Um, and Democrats do, but when they do, it seems performative, and they only do it long enough to try and convince
Well,
a voter to give them
I
something.
remember when Republicans believed in Christian nationalism.
Yeah, some of them
Back
do.
in the day, remember?
Some of them believe in it.
Yeah, it's changed. You're right.
But again, remember that, and I've said this before, as a former Republican, right? When you're a young Republican political operative, the only goal is to win, right? Like that's the job. The job is to win.
Mm,
And if you're not going to win the election, then what is this all about? Right? There are no
yeah.
moral victories in a campaign. You win or you lose. We don't have a parliamentary system where your party got 38% of the seats and mine got 27% of the seats and somebody else. So we all have to go through this coalition building process. This is what we have. And right now we have one party that's completely off the reservations, my old party, the one I grew up in, and another party who's in the wilderness and frankly is going to take a little while. And their fights need to be open and ugly and honest, right? But they have to be honest, I think, is the most important thing. Like, what is it that, if you had the chance, what would you do for the American people? And I
Well,
don't think they've adequately answered that question.
it's like, and their internal party squabbles are kind of pathetic. I mean, getting rid of David Hogg, the DNC vice chairman, over like a woke technicality. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, because there had to be a split of genders, I think, the number of voter.
Well, and look, this is the difference between the DNC and the RNC. Like at the RNC, somebody would have like had him to dinner and
Yeah.
like said, "Hey, I want to talk to you," and like pushed him up against the wall and go, "You're fucking quitting. You got it. You're done. Get out." Right? Like there wouldn't have been a second chance. There wouldn't have been an opportunity. If you want to get rid of him, then just say we're changing the rules to say we're getting rid of you. Right? At least be honest about it.
No, it's see that it creates the impression that everything in the Democratic Party is rigged and the party
Well, I
fixes
mean,
everything, which they've always already thought anyway. But
but
also,
that's the
why
point.
are they
That's the
getting rid
problem.
of?
Is that that's the assumption, which it's hard to refute in some cases.
I don't necessarily think what he's doing is wrong, though.
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, I texted with a senior member of the DNC just a couple of weeks ago and said to offer my help, Said, it looks like you guys are having some trouble. I'm happy to pitch in.
No,
What do
no,
they
I
write
don't think
back?
what David Hogg is doing is wrong.
No, but this is my point. They said help out like interviewing David Hogg, and I said David Hogg is not your problem, right? But that's the level of like pettiness. Is like I interviewed the guy because I wanted to hear what he had to say,
Yeah,
right?
he's
Which is what you
insistent.
should want. I mean, if you're going to be the liberal party, then you have to be liberal. You have to be willing to accept other viewpoints. You have to be willing to accept that a collection of septuagenarians and octogenarians are not the path forward. But so far, can't let go.
Mm.
Don't want to let go.
I just thought it was
So,
interesting that they basically said there weren't enough that the gender split wasn't correct because one of the people one of the people running was trans, and it was just like they
well,
somehow
but then,
outwoke themselves.
well, look, and in the process of getting rid of Hogg, they got rid of a gay black man too.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, what? What? I
Collateral
mean,
damage.
what do
Collateral
these jobs
damage.
do anyway? Nobody cares. But now this is the story. You got Martin up there crying about Hogg. He's not letting me do my job. I mean, it's just like throw the whole lot of them out. Throw the whole lot of them out and start over. All right. I know you've got to run because you
Yeah.
are busy on the trail of various things. Where can everybody find you and how should they subscribe?
Thanks. I'm at the Red Letter. That is my channel, and and my Substack, and I break news there. I write a column. I put up my YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel as well. It's at Tara Palmeri. I interview newsmakers all the time, like Reed, and I also break down complicated issues with my original reporting. Been a reporter for like 15 years now, and I covered the first Trump administration as a White House correspondent for ABC.
Well, we need more of that. We need more breaking down and less hot takes. I know I'm probably guilty of them. As always, gang, please go to the Homefront and sign up. You can always find me at my podcast as well, also called The Homefront. Tara Palmeri, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Cheers.
Everybody else, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.